right, let's now welcome Clinical Director at the Teddy Bear Foundation, Dr. Shaheda Omar. Good afternoon, Dr. Omar, and happy Mother's Day to you. Again, Doctor, another harrowing incident that we have to discuss, unfortunately. Talk to us about what your views are on this assault case of the 2-year-old boy who was hit at his school that has now since fallen ill due to that incident of assault.
There are so many things here that I would like to share, but I'll focus on the fact that what would make a child of that age fabricate or confabulate? What would his underlying motivation be to make up such a story? That's the one thing. So the stance is that we always believe children. Secondly, the fact that there's been no consequence management. If we look at the educational institution, the follow-ups, the lack of consequence management, the lack of documentation, because we then hear from the provincial department, there's no record. Unfortunately, this is what we are finding, that there isn't coordination, there isn't follow-through. And we have to understand that children live their narratives. It's painful narratives. And a young child of that age, and even older children, are not always in a position to actually articulate, express their painful narratives that they've been subjected to, the trauma they've been subjected to. We should not treat corporal punishment lightly. And it leaves an imprint on the brain. And what does it do? It rewires and predisposes children to certain kinds of behavioral disorders, manifestations, as has been clearly described in this case where the child is suffering from migraine. So this is a child that is crying out for help, who cannot verbalize what has happened and what he is feeling. So what happens is that he is now somatizing. You see the psychosomatic symptoms panning out, affecting his well-being, affecting his functioning. And certainly those that are closest and nearest and dearest to him can see how it has impacted on his well-being. So I think we cannot treat this lightly, but the reality is that the systems that are supposed to act swiftly, timelessly, and respond appropriately and adequately, I think, is where the challenges lie. The systems are undercapacitated, under-resourced, ill-equipped to respond and ensure the safety and protection of children. Here we can see it was articulated that the lack of response because of law enforcement backlogs, the NPA and that other provinces are in a more better position, a stronger, favorable position. And these are the complexities that have to be addressed, because if we want to ensure the safety and protection of children and break the scourge of violence, one cannot look over this any longer. These are systemic challenges, but it requires coordination, collaboration, and integrated efforts to ensure that children do not fall prey to this kind of violation. They are our most marginalized and vulnerable population group.
Absolutely, Doctor. You know, when you speak about consequent management, in this case, I mean, it's not even corporal punishment. This is a clear assault. So let's talk about how important it is then for the department to screen their teachers and to also ensure adherence to ethical conduct by the educators. Look, there's really a lot happening at schools, from allegations of teachers raping or even having romantic relationships with their students. I mean, the list is just endless, as you've just alluded to. Have we ignored these ills, inadvertently also enabling this behavior to perpetuate at our schools?
So if we look at the landscape, we see a lot of schools that are there trying to shield and protect their reputation. They don't want to tarnish their reputation. That's another huge challenge where they are, and it's a big cover-up, unfortunately. And therefore there isn't documentation, follow through. And these, people have to be held accountable. These things have to be accelerated and people need to be held accountable. You speak about the vetting and screening of people working with children. We're still finding that although there's, standardized protocols, requirements, unfortunately, that's not always happening on the ground. And if we look at the rural areas, now in this case, Mahikeng, a school disadvantaged than an urban school. These are, ongoing challenges that have to be taken seriously, and departments have to be held accountable, whether it's the principal, whether it's the school governing body. But people, if there is no consequence management, we are not going to find this coming to an end, to disrupt the cycle of violence. And you are absolutely correct. This constitutes abuse of the highest order. Assault is definitely unlawful, it's unacceptable, it's a heinous crime that we should have zero tolerance for.
And simply dismissing a teacher is not going to assist, because they could simply be relocated to another school and perpetuate the same behavior.
They move on and they get another job and they continue with their lives. They continue to perpetuate the cycle of violence, leaving children at the mercy of these predators.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much for your input. That is Dr. Shaheda Omar, the Clinical Director at the Teddy Bear Foundation.